logo, Eat Network Connection.
We might not be able to do it on YouTube. Tell me if that changes.
Okay.
And otherwise, we'll have to do Instagram.
It's climbed to 600.
That's probably too choppy.
7.
What's the color?
Red.
Yeah, that's not good enough.
9.
You only have one bar over here. What's it showing now?
It dropped. It's down to 3.
Is there anybody even in the chat?
Yeah. Let's see.
If there's someone in the chat right now, how's the stream? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Is it viable enough to talk? Let me know. We got another bar that came up, so I haven't lost it again. It's choppy. We can try Instagram.
Picture looks good. Someone else says it's fine.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's okay on Facebook at least.
Okay. All right.
These are all Facebook people. They do have one question already. They want to know if this is a Zach Bagans case.
No. Although there will probably be future Zach Bagans cases. This is not one of them. This is also, but there is a filmmaker that is joining us for this one. So you will be able to eventually see this case, but it's not a Ghost Adventures. We're heading to Alabama, which is actually not too far from our house. And this is a case that the investigation team out there has been trying to get us to come to for a while. This is not our case. This is not a case for the Order of Exorcists. This is a local paranormal investigation team out in Alabama that acquired this case, and they realized that, or they were able to confirm that there is something genuinely demonic going on, and that they felt that they needed additional help with someone more experienced with this type of thing. And that's when they contacted us. Of course, this was during a lot of the last 2 years of COVID, and we weren't really traveling during that time, nor were we taking new cases, just because of travel restrictions and having to deal with local requirements that can sometimes be too much of a inhibitor to the work that we do. So we just felt it was best to discontinue the outreach until things normalized with travel. And now we're at that point where travel's for the most part normal, and most places have gone back to pre-COVID behavior, which makes it easier for us to do our job. So when we open back up again, we continued to explore this case and eventually agreed to go out to take it. So at the time that we set up the date and made the final preparations, which was this week, that evening the lead investigator's house burned to the ground and he lost everything. Fortunately, he wasn't there. He was staying with his mother at the time, but apparently it was a total loss from what I understand. This just happened 2 nights ago. Also that same night, Jamie Wolf was washing glassware in her sink, and the glass shattered in her hand and sliced up her hand pretty good, from what I understand. top of that, several of of the church's prayer team had dreams this week about fires. And this was before they knew that the lead investigator's house burned down. Now, for those of you who have followed me for a while and have listened to various talks I've given on demonology as well as discussions about the work that we do, you probably have heard me say in the past that there are two activity, and particularly when they occur together. The second is spontaneous fires. So if fires are just happening for no definitive reason, if a fire occurs, an appliance lights on fire for some reason, these are things that we're looking for. Now, just because they might have a natural cause doesn't mean they're not related to the demonic event. It's what we're looking for is multiple experiences of this that should not be happening. Something that falls outside of the realm of coincidence. So anytime that we hear or know of these things going on where there's either glass breaking or spontaneous fires, we take those more seriously because these are indicators of something more severe going on.
They're reporting that the video is freezing. It had dropped. It's climbing back up now.
Yeah, we're on a cell connection, so that's going to happen. How's the audio though? Can you at least hear me? Am I talking to the wind or? What's our value at?
2,000.
Well, that's pretty good.
Well, it had dropped.
Okay.
Yeah, they can hear it. It's okay. The video that was freezing.
All right. Well, the video, yeah, that's going to be the more demanding thing. As long as you can hear me, that's fine. Nothing I can do about it. We're not on Wi-Fi. We're using cell network on the highway. So
the lead investigator's here.
Oh, really? Okay. Tell me more about that when we arrive. Anyway, those are things that we're looking for. Glass breaking, spontaneous glass breaking, the sound of glass breaking, and then spontaneous fires. Natural cause or supernatural cause is irrelevant. We're always looking for these kinds of occurrences. Now, anytime you have a confirmed it is. Obviously, if it's a demonic infestation where there's not an attachment to a kind of case, from what I understand, I don't go into a case. I like to assess the situation.
It dropped again. Like it's like drop. Give it a second.
Can you guys at least hear me? Let me know if you still have audio at least.
I'm guessing it interrupted because it like almost died.
Well, we should have. I mean, there's more bars now.
Mm-hmm. It's climbing.
Police reported ahead.
All right, you can probably talk now.
So that's where we're headed. So the outreach is back open in full force. We're taking cases all over the United States. We're particularly looking for, if those of you are, if you're wondering about what we're looking for, we're particularly looking for cases on the West Coast right now. California, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico. If you have any cases out there that you feel would be good cases for us to evaluate, let us know. The intake form is now open on the website again. It was closed for almost the entire time in COVID. But it's open again, and you should be able to access it and fill out an intake form. We need as much detail as possible. Sometimes people fill out this form and just write one sentence that says, I need your help. That's not a detailed description. And we typically don't even, consider cases like that. So if you want us to seriously consider your case, you need to tell us what's going on with a lengthy description in the intake form. That is available on nicholean.org, nicholean.org, or you can also go to esotericcatholic.org. Both of those are the same website, and just click on Request Investigation. I think is what it says in the menu. Request an investigation. And that will bring you to the form. You fill out the form, and if it's a case that we want to consider, we'll reach out to you. Understand we get more cases than we can handle. We get more cases than we can take. We get several cases a week. Even now, just recently opening back up, we're getting several cases a week. And, there's only so many of those we can take. Most of them are not viable or ones that we would consider. But we look at all of them. Everything will get evaluated. You just might not be a case that we take. But if you want us to consider your case, the best way is to fill out the intake form once, not more than once, because that can actually upset the queue, and you'll get pushed to the back of the list again. And also to give us as much detail as possible. And we're, like I said, particularly looking for cases that are on the West Coast: California, Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, that sort of thing. As far as everything else goes, do you guys have any questions? I'd just like to, we've been out of touch, and normally tonight we would have Mass. I don't typically like taking cases on Saturdays because it closes the church down. We're making an exception for this one, but ordinarily we do not do investigations on the weekend. That's when we're, handling regular pastoral responsibilities, and for us to go somewhere on a weekend means that we need to shut down the church, where our congregation loses the Mass for the week, and I don't like doing that. So typically we don't take cases on the weekend unless we make an exception, and that's a rare exception. This is one of those rare times. But I wanted to reach out so that you guys know what's going on.
Marina says she hopes we have a greasy taco joint lined up.
Well, we're doing Longhorn beforehand, so I'm going to get myself a nice porterhouse probably.
I don't know if Milo's is open late enough. I might get me some fries.
That might be a good time for that. Yeah, greasy fries maybe. But yeah, I'm sure we'll find something.
Pete said that he'll say a rosary.
Thank you.
And he also mentioned that he read that Ed and Lorraine Warren would often have car trouble when going to significant cases.
Yeah, I've never had car trouble, thank God, on a significant case. But what I do get are little annoyances that happen before I leave. For example, speaking of the theme of fires and everything, last night we came home after dropping Levi off with his grandparents, and pulled into the garage, and we smelled a profuse smell of gasoline. I kind of dismissed it, went inside the house, but you could smell it inside the house too. And so at that point, we're like, well, we need to go check to why we're getting that smell. Because, sometimes, it's just like garages can sometimes smell like gasoline with all the equipment you have in there and stuff. So I went and looked at the riding mower, which is in there because I don't have a cover for it right now. You really shouldn't store lawn equipment in your garage. I wouldn't recommend it. But I haven't built a utility shed yet on the property, and I didn't want all that stuff sitting out in the rain, because for those of you who have been in the Atlanta area, you probably know that it's been, for the last several months, it's been raining practically every day. That just stopped happening. We've just been having some clear weather for this week, but prior to that, it was like Florida, rain every day. And so we get home, and I smell that gas, and we smell it inside. So I go out to look at the riding mower, which is the only thing I can think of that would be the culprit for this. And I don't see anything. I don't detect anything. But the smell is definitely coming from the mower. So I pull it out, and I left it in the driveway. It's not supposed to rain. So I put it in the driveway overnight. I went to bed, wake up the next morning, the garage no longer smells like gas. I go out to look at the riding mower, and there's definitely a little puddle underneath the carburetor that is leaking gas. It's a very small leak. It evaporates almost as soon as it hits the ground, but it was leaving enough of a stain on the driveway that I could tell that there's definitely something going on. So that's what the smell was. And I'm just thinking, it's like, there's little annoyances like before a case, and the reason trying to stop you from coming, and it's not really even that cognizant. It's just high energy situations of a low frequency produce these kinds of effects, and so it can that one of the responsibilities, I guess, of the Christian is to. And we're just right now, I should mention this, we're just now entering the Alabama state line. So the whole time I've been talking to you was pretty much from the time we left the house to get to Alabama, only about 20 minutes.
Give it a second because it dropped real low.
Because we're no longer on Georgia cell towers. All right, back up again.
Give it a second. It takes longer.
Anyone that can hear me, let me know though. I'm just curious if it's just the video or if it's sound too.
It looks like it's video problems until it drops below 2, and then everything freezes.
Everything freezes up.
I'm just letting it climb a little bit longer.
No, it's fine now. You're good. As long as we don't lose the stream.
Okay, I think you can.
We're on the way. We wouldn't take cases in Alabama, but now that we're our personal radius is, I've always said the order of exorcists for the Atlanta division has a 2-hour radius around Atlanta, and beyond that we consider it as an out-of-state case. But technically, because now my radius is closer to the Alabama state line, I guess I can start including at least Birmingham into our general radius. Exhausted. But yeah, getting back to the question about car trouble and stuff like that, for me it's just little annoyances that are usually somehow related to
Thanks, Pete.
The kind of demonic activity that is being anticipated. So this seems to be some kind of energetically charged demonic presence that has a connection to fire, to the fire element. And so the disturbances are going to be related to that. Usually the demons that we encounter are more related to the water element. And the last several cases that I went on that were severe left us with flooding problems at our old house, remember? It happened twice actually, where it created a mess. And that was just literally either the night or the morning of leaving for the case. Earth element demonic entities will tend to create pests. So oftentimes, everyone has probably seen Amityville Horror with the flies. The fly incident. Some people say that was fabricated, that it never really happened. But I can say, in my own experience, I have encountered that. One of our earlier cases, one of the first cases that we took as representatives of the Order of Exorcists back in the early days of the outreach, my house filled 60 of them for no apparent reason. It was the morning of, getting ready to leave for the trip, and the house was just covered in flies, and we could not figure out the source. It wasn't like we had barbecued that previous evening and left the windows open or the doors open, or, you know, sometimes that can attract them. Just out of nowhere, the house was full of flies. And it was the morning I left for that investigation. That's typically an earth element. So these are the little things that we look for that help us to identify what we're dealing with. It's what they're organized towards, to it as astrology. So, you know, I mean, if you're a Cancer like I am, I was born in July, so that makes me Cancer. I'm a water element. So
Hold on, it's unstable.
Okay, we'll hold off on that question. I'll answer it again, just in case it got cut off.
Right. Okay, it's climbing.
Okay, so just in case it got cut off, I'll answer it again. So, why are demons connected to an element? Is because all things are connected to an element. All parts of creation are connected to one of the 4 primary elements of creation, which are represented as earth, fire, air, and water. And all things are energetically organized according to one of those elements as a primary substance. And so with people, it's astrology that we look for this. So I was born in July. That makes me Cancer. Cancer is a water sign. So energetically, I am organized according to water. And demons are the same thing, because they are also creatures. We need to always remember that they are not divine beings. They're not immortal. They are not omniscient, omnipotent. They are not all-powerful. Okay, they are creatures, just like we are. Different type of creature, perhaps more cunning and more intelligent than most human beings, which gives them a bit of an advantage in that respect, but a creature nonetheless. And they are organized according to the cosmos and ordered according to the cosmos in much the same way that anything else in the universe is. So yes, demons are energetically connected to one element over another, and that gives us identifying information about what we're dealing with and how to deal with them. So if we're actually, is this a lane or not?
No, I think it's a merge.
It's a merge lane, okay. But Alabama doesn't like to put paint on the road, so here we go. All right. So, yeah, and identification is a big part of resolution. You know, people want to go into these cases and they just want to say a bunch of prayers without really ever identifying what they're dealing with. That's why it fails. You need to know what you're working with and how to work with it. And you want to counter the element of what you're dealing with. It's basic magic, occult magic. So there is an occult component to this that comes from the ancient teachings of demonology, and that kind of turns a lot of, I think, Christians off from it because they relate it to witchcraft or something like that. But if you're not willing to understand what you're working with, you're not going to be able to work very effectively with it. So you can't fear things like the occult or witchcraft to do this work. You just have to get into it and use all that information to your advantage, and that's how you outsmart the demon.
Bradley on YouTube said last night his dryer caught on fire.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
See,
they caught it in time.
Well, that's good.
And that's why you don't leave appliances running when you leave the house.
Yeah, I'm a little bit neurotic about lights being off and things like that, but you know, that's why I always bless and seal my home.
Aaron on Facebook says, I think it's so crazy that you experience these things before you even leave your house, almost like the demon overhears that you are coming and somehow finds you 3+ hours away.
Well, and see, that's because of the energetic connection. for one thing, non-corporeal beings are not confined to spatial, I guess space and time in the same way that we are. There is a connection, and it's how manifestations happen. It's how infestations occur, as well as attachments attached to locations and people. But any non-corporeal being is not going to be confined to the boundaries of space-time like a physical corporeal being is. And so where you are is less important than how you are energetically aligned to the situation. So as soon as the church decides we're going to go fight this thing, we have created an energetic link. Anybody who prays has created an energetic link. You know, I know that we've got and that's not to discourage people from praying. That is your obligation as a Christian. That's what the church is supposed to do. It's supposed to unify and unite against the forces of darkness, and stand against these things as the body of Christ. So yes, that's going to create a connection, but it's also going to empower each individual that's involved to resolve it more effectively. Remember, the energy that demons possess is basically parasitic. They don't have any energy of their own. The only energy they obtain is by a parasitic response to us, usually, and that's what motivates them to produce temptation and sin, because that's what becomes the fuel that they feed on. But the most important one is fear. That's the most powerful source of demonic food. You want to put out a buffet? The finest meal that you can serve a demon is fear. Which is why you don't have that luxury when you're doing this work. You just go in and do it. You produce fear, you incite the energy. But yeah, it's all about energetic connection. It has very little to do with space and time. We're linear creatures. We think in linear ways, and we expect that demons are going to be working, with a past, present, and future in the same way that we do. It doesn't work like that.
Strong connection.
Oh, good. Okay. What's on anyone else's minds? Hopefully this is coming through on YouTube and Facebook clearly. We're simulcasting it, but like I said, we're at the mercy of the cell service. So. An hour here, so I'm watching I get the bars on my screen here. I can see, and I can see them go up to 4 and then come back to 1. Up to 4, I can see when I'm crossing towers. Right now, we're in a weak spot. So this should be an interesting case, a good one to get started up again. Like I said, there's a filmmaker that's documenting this one, from what I understand. He's going to be there, so you'll be able to watch kind of parts of what happens tonight. Hopefully, it's not a integrated, what I call an integrated attachment. There's 2 basic types of attachment. There's integrated attachment, and there's surface attachment. And integrated attachment is more involved and lengthy.
45 minutes, exit 136.
A more lengthy process that requires a great deal more effort to resolve, whereas a surface attachment is something that can usually be broken fairly easily by someone who knows what they're doing. So I don't know what we're dealing with here tonight in terms of that. It does look like it's an attachment. It looks like it's reached an impression level, but I don't know if it's integrated yet. If it's integrated, I'm going to be more well, there's going to be less that I'll be able to do. Because, I mean, it is a long-distance case. I can't be driving out to Alabama, every week.
Interesting. I'll get to your question in a second, Jana, but Cassie just said it's National Ghost Hunt Day. According to paranormal social media groups, there will be lots of investigations tonight.
That's interesting. And, what's really also strange is that there's a conspiracy theory out that there was supposed to be some kind of apocalyptic event tonight. They were saying that it was supposed to be, some people were saying there was going to be a major electromagnetic burst that wipes out the power grid, a solar flare, some kind of cyber attack. It's not any credible thing, but it's not about, for me, I'm not looking at these things, these conspiracies, as credible events in time. I'm looking at them as archetypal representations of the energy that's present in the moment, because it tells me about the quality of time. It's almost like a type of divination, in a way, looking at the energy and how it affects people. So yes, the more wild the conspiracy theory associated with a particular point in time, the more energy is being invested in that moment, which means stranger things are going to happen. Paranormal events or disturbances are going to be stronger. So it doesn't surprise me at all that this is a day for ghost hunting, and that there's all sorts of that there's like sort of a conjunction of energy that a lot of different people are dealing with in different ways.
A lot of people have said they'll be praying tonight.
Please, remember, you don't only just give us strength when you do that. You're also providing strength for yourself, because you're participating in the body of Christ, and there's really nothing more powerful than that.
Jana asks, are you affected after your cases?
Sometimes. Never been anything that's been, worse than fatigue or a headache.
It's like recovering after a cold, or a bad cold,
or a night of heavy drinking. It kind of feels a little bit like a hangover.
It's a little bit worse than
I haven't been drunk since I was very young. So
Watch out. Vehicle on shoulder ahead.
Can the review it? Two people have expressed concern that the demon could reach them through this live connection.
I mean, it's again, you're a corporeal linear being thinking like a corporeal linear being. Demons don't operate that way. So, a television connection is not going to connect you to it. It is direct involvement with it.
Okay, it's climbing.
Okay, so back to demons with, can they reach you through a television feed or a live stream or something? The answer to that is no, because there would be no direct incentive. There's no direct energetic connection. Being a mere spectator does not energetically connect you to it.
Which is also why sacraments don't work.
Correct. It's the exact time. Can you hear my confession on the phone? Can I Skype you and get, and you can absolve me over Skype? No, I can't. No, any more than I can give you the Eucharist at Mass over the live feed of the Mass. It requires physical connection, and it needs to have an energetic connection on top of that. Sacraments require both the energetic and physical connection. Demons only require, in terms of how it would connect you to this, an energetic connection. And that would mean that you would energetically resolve to involve yourself with that demon. Being a mere spectator does not do this. Now, again, let's make an example. So let's say you have an audience member, 2 audience members. One is watching this because they're entertained by the story and they want to hear more about it. They're just interested in the subject matter. And another is like, I want to go kick that demon's ass. Can I come? Well, the former is not making any energetic connection. They're just simply watching, observing, dispassionately. But the person who gets riled up and wants to actually go and fight this thing is making an energetic connection to that thing. And that would put them, or not at risk, but it would put them in connection with this thing. So when people think that they were watched Ghost Adventures or something, and that, you know, something that happened on the show came home with them after watching the show, it's probably it has more to do with you making an energetic connection personally than it had anything to do with you watching the show. But you can make energetic connections with anything at any time. You can go to the supermarket and come in contact with someone who has a demonic attachment and take some of that energy home with you. I mean, that's why the church exists. Because it's there to protect all of the body of Christ from the fallen world.
The lead says, I feel that because I have confronted the entity directly and I have directly contacted you. That was enough of an energetic connection.
Oh, absolutely. No question about that. I mean, that makes it personal. You know,
you're involved now.
Yeah. Which means that a person has to be even more spiritually protected, preferably through the church and the sacraments, because that is the tools that Jesus gave us to succeed in this work. You know, this is how we are supposed to navigate and accomplish salvation through the fallen world is through those protections that only the church can offer.
So here's a good one.
Okay.
Can entities be summoned watching rituals on TV, like the rituals performed on Ghost Adventures, for example? I'll add my own extension to that.
Rituals are problematic.
Yeah.
Yes, rituals are problematic. Want to tell them about the movie Hereditary? Yeah.
Well, there's an actual, what was it, a sigil? I don't even remember. What was it?
It was a sigil.
Real?
It was an actual demonic sigil that they used in the movie, and it also was associated with very accurate practices.
Mm-hmm.
That movie literally conjured things, and people that were in the audience the night that we watched this in theaters, actually vulnerable, started reacting bizarrely as soon as that came on screen.
One patron 2 rows ahead of us started smelling like a really foul odor and blamed it on the person directly behind them, their feet.
They kept stomping on their chair
Mm-hmm.
and wouldn't stop.
Right. They kept putting their feet on there, disrupting the movie.
Yeah.
So I leaned down to ask the person in front of us, please remove your shoes, because I thought they were just being an
ass.
Yeah. And thank you. And they looked up at me and their eyes.
So that's a prime example of a ritual being simulated. And the reason for that is that the universe does not know what's fiction and what's non-fiction. To the universe,
you're still doing
the
it.
action is all that matters. The intent is less important when you're dealing with...
Oh, we just dropped. I'll remind you where you were. Okay, it's climbing.
Intention is less important. So people are always like saying, "Oh, if I go on TV, or if I'm an actor in a movie and I perform a ritual, as long as I'm just acting, I'm okay, I'm safe, because we're just pretending." But the universe doesn't know you're pretending, because the intent was built into the ritual, if it's a real ritual. So when you have these movies that try to be so authentic that they want to use real sigils from these ancient medieval grimoires, or if you have movies that, you know, that get a consultant who's a Satanist and a religious Satanist and brings them on to make sure that the rituals are accurate, the intent is in the ritual. It doesn't matter if the person performing it as an actor or an actual practitioner, the cosmos responds to it the same way because the intention is already built into the ritual. That's the danger. So yes.
That's why it's like a trope for horror films to have problems on set.
Yeah, it is exactly why it happens. And that's why we get called in, why we got called into Conjuring 3. And they wanted a real exorcist there for that movie. Because they've had... The reality is, generally speaking, as long as you're just an observer watching a TV show, you're never going to run into a problem. You have to make energetic connections. The way that happens is your intent or the intent of something else. So a ritual can draw you in through its own built-in intention. And that's why what makes the ritual shows dangerous. Yes, those are dangerous.
The lead says, I also believe that if the fire was the entity trying to intimidate me, it was prevented from harming me physically.
Yes, and that's probably your spiritual foundation that's, you know, been able to do that for you. Thank God you weren't there when that happened. Because, you know, it can. I mean, people do die in this work. I mean, I think it's all fun and games because, you know, you watch Ghost Adventures, it looks like fun. And it is fun. I'm not going to say it's not fun. I mean, when I do Ghost Adventures, yeah, it's dark and disturbing when you're dealing with families that are in crisis. But, you know, going into these places and is interesting. If you're interested in the paranormal, you know, working with a team like the GAC is fascinating. There's enjoyment in that. You know, but the reality is it's not fun and games. Paranormal investigation is a very serious thing. Most people shouldn't even be doing it. Because there's no certificate of practice that you can get. You know, there's no accredited degree that you can go to school for to train properly to do this. The closest to programs that some churches offer. It's the closest. And those are far and few between and still grossly inadequate.
John, the lead, points out the original Poltergeist movie had several deaths and tragedies associated with it.
Yeah, because energetically there was a connection there. And it was too accurately portrayed, I think. You know, it's one of my favorite movies, though.
So, LP says, I heard on shows like American Horror Story Coven, the one actress had to do summoning scene, yet the writers used an actual summoning ritual.
Yeah, and when you do that, then you make it real. And it doesn't, your intention no longer matters. All that matters is the intention of the person who created the ritual. If it's a real ritual, if it was created by an actual practitioner who knew what they were doing, it doesn't matter if it's an actor pretending to do it, it still has the same archetypal effect cosmically. So the only time you'd be safe is if it was truly made up by fiction. If you had a writer who just wrote some fake ritual but didn't really connect it to anything real. Which is why, like, watching Lord of the Rings or something is not gonna bring demons into your house or something like that, because the conjurations there are truly fiction. They were not written with any actual intent behind them. But when you use real rituals, then the cosmos doesn't know if you're pretending or not. And honestly, it doesn't care. It just does what it does.
Is that why a priest can be a horrible person, but the sacraments he performs are still valid and effective?
Yeah. Well, my God. I mean, who among us is not a sinner? So thank God for that. Because if you needed to be as holy as Jesus Christ to perform the sacraments, we'd all be out of luck. There wouldn't be anybody holy enough to do it. Because even the greatest saints of all are prolific sinners. That, they're no one's a great person. And it's kind of playing games with yourself to assume that one person is better than another just because one person may be committing murders and the other one's just lying. Sin-wise, it's kind of the same. You're still creating a breach in your relationship to God. Whether you're a murderer or a liar, you might think the lie is not as severe. Life.
You talked about the Lord of the Rings and a Balrog? Darn.
You need to create a...
That's a good one.
You're going to need a real practitioner to do it. And then he's going to have to know how to create the thought form that would activate in the same way that fictional character does. And that is possible. Thought forms are very much misunderstood things, a big part of the work that we do. In fact, most demonic events are actually thought forms and not fallen angels. And again, it gets back to because the universe doesn't know when you're being serious or not, and it doesn't care.
Earlier, way up thread, someone asked if we would be streaming any of tonight.
No, we won't be streaming because this is being filmed for a television show. So when we are doing when it's being documented professionally by a filmmaker, we don't tend to do that. And additionally, a second reason is we don't live stream demonic oppressions. We'll do hauntings, like if we go into if we're cleaning out a haunted house or even a demonic infestation. But when it's affecting a family, we don't really stream that. I'm not saying that we wouldn't if we had a family that really wanted to use this as a means to get the word out. Sometimes we do have people that want us to stream just so that other people can learn the real, what we find, and it's very, very interesting, is we find that a lot of our clients understand the need to destigmatize this work.
Mm-hmm.
And to demystify it, so it doesn't seem like it's some, outrageous...
That it's not going on.
Yes.
It must be something else.
Yes. That they think it's all in their head, or they think it's psychological illness, or, and sometimes it is. Sometimes it's not. And most people don't know the difference because they're not being told how to look for the difference, and there's not enough information about it. And traditionally, the church has been very tight-lipped about this work. I'm one of the very few clergy that is willing to step forward and into the public eye and talk about this plainly. So a lot of our clients recognize the value in that and are wanting us to stream. But we typically do not, unless it was a rare circumstance, we typically do not stream demonic attachments.
Are believers and non-believers in the same amount of danger?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that everybody is living in the fallen world, and all it takes is the right combination of factors for you to come in contact with the wrong energy that is not compatible with your own, and you can form an attachment that way. So everyone's at risk for that. The church and people that have strong spiritual foundations mitigates that risk.
It's kind of like, instead of saying we're all in the same boat, the new phrase is we're all in the same storm.
Correct. So, like, for example, you could be in let's use that analogy. Let's say, you're in a hurricane's coming. You live in Florida and a hurricane's on its way. You could take it very seriously and, get really strong hurricane shutters on your house, build a nice cinder block home that is, solid and maybe even an underground bunker. I mean, there's all sorts of possible things that you could do to protect yourself from the storm. And then there might be another person that's going through the same storm that just doesn't take it seriously. Either one of you is still at risk because the storm's coming through. But the person who took precautions is going to have a better chance at getting out of that situation without harm than the one that doesn't take it seriously. So a non-believer is like a person who doesn't take it seriously. They don't take the precautions. They don't think they have to. Whereas a person who does take the church seriously, does take faith seriously, is going to be more protected but still at risk because we're still sharing the fallen world. And we're still coming into contact with evil. And there's risk there. It's just a person that has strong faith is going to have better tools to protect against that risk. But, you know, and as a side note, being a non-believer is its own protection sometimes for a couple reasons. One, that typically if you don't believe in energy, you're not drawing energy in. So you're not a very good magnet when you don't believe, because you're not making connections. You're not making random connections or accidental connections. When you're just dealing with the mundane world, then all you attract is the mundane world, and there's no demonic attachment there. So that's the first thing that you could say protects non-believers. The other thing that protects non-believers is simply the fact that they're not really very attractive to demonic entities, because what are they trying to do? Ruin their salvation? The person doesn't care about their salvation. So why would a demon want to get involved with someone that's not really a good trophy? You know, the trophy for a demon is someone that has faith, and to break that faith and to destroy that person spiritually. But what value would there be in destroying someone's spirituality who doesn't even have a spirituality? Kind of a waste of time. So those two things protect non-believers, believe it or not.
Well, protect. Air quotes.
Well, if you're talking about demonic attachment, they're not typically at risk for them. That doesn't mean there's not consequences later on for you know, living a life without the need of faith, if you don't think you need faith. But that's for you and God to deal with eventually. It won't involve demons.
Let me see.
Looks like we got a good, strong connection now that we're getting closer to Birmingham.
Just looking for questions I might have missed. Oh, good one. John says there are more demons sitting outside the church than at the local bar.
Yeah, there's a little monastic story that monks like to tell novices that is similar to that. I think I've told this story before, and I can tell it again for those of you who might not have heard it. But it goes something like this: there's two Christian monks. One is a tenured, seasoned monk who's been, you know, a monk for most of his life and is approaching his elderly years. And then there's a new postulant who just joined the monastery and is, you know, learning. And they live out in the wilderness, and every week someone from the monastery has to go into town to pick up supplies for the community. And so it was this monk's turn to go, and so the master, the senior monk, goes with the postulant to show him what he needs to do when he does it in the future. And so they go into town, and they're walking into town. And when they approach the town, the postulant makes note of all of the brothels and taverns and all these drunk people and prostitutes everywhere, and just how this little town is this real big den of iniquity, right? There's all this sin going on. And he recognizes it, and they're just like, let's get in and get out. I want to get out of here. I don't like the energy. You know, I just want to get out of this place. So they go in, they do, start heading home. So once they start getting back into the wilderness, you know, the negativity of that town starts to settle down, and they're having a nice quiet conversation. And then they reach a point where they get to the top of a hill, where at the top of this hill you can see the monastery out in the distance. And while they're approaching the monastery and they're now able to see it, the postulant notices that there's all these little things floating around the monastery. He's like, what is that? Are those bats? Are they, birds? Or like, looks like swarms of insects. And as they get closer, the postulant realizes what he's looking at are not bats, birds, or insects, but demons, all circling the monastery. And so he looks at the senior monk and says, I don't understand. We just came out of one of the most horrible dens of iniquity, with all the prostitutes and all the drunkard people and all the, the crime and, the murders and everything else. And we didn't see one demon in that town. And yet, why are they all at this holy place where God lives? It's a temple of the Holy Spirit, a monastery. It's the presence of God in the sacrament. And the senior monk says, what benefit would there be to the demonic to win any of those people back at the town? The real work is to try to break the faith of the monastery. So the holier and closer you are to God, the holier you are and the closer you are to God, the closer Satan is to you.
The bigger the prize.
Yeah. That's just the way it works.
Nice strong connection. Any other questions? It's like there's always a lag in questions.
There is.
The
Well, because
connection's
it's 20
good.
minutes. It's 20 minutes. 20 seconds, rather. It's 20 minutes. 20 seconds.
Oh, I know. It's like, but I'm just saying, like, when the connection goes, the chat tends to die.
Yeah. I appreciate all you guys for joining me on this long drive. It helps to make the time pass and makes the drive more tolerable. I'm not a person that really likes long car rides.
He did this so I wouldn't sleep.
I did this so
I wouldn't sleep.
Well, that's one of the happy benefits of it. No, it helps keep my mind fresh, and it passes the time, and it also gives me a chance to give you guys something, because we're not having Mass tonight.
Have you seen any rise in demonic problems because of social media's influence in spirituality, like apps from TikTok?
It's kind of the other way around. It's not because of TikTok or the negativity of social media. TikTok and social media in general is basically a reflection of the spiritual climate that it exists within. And so if our spiritual climate is dark, negative, very much demonically influenced, then social media is going to reflect that.
I don't necessarily think that's what they meant.
Ask the question again, then.
Well, I could be reading into it, because I do TikTok and you don't. There are, like, spiritual influencers on TikTok, which is why I'm trying to get you on TikTok. Oh, hi, Shane. Shane's watching.
Oh, cool.
Shane, I love you. No, but there's a lot of spiritual influencers that, they do cleansings and has there been I guess let's make it a more open-ended question. Have you seen a rise in demonic influences, problems because of social media's influence?
kind of chicken or the egg. It's hard to say, because we just came out of the whole COVID-19 thing, and that created a lot of divisiveness and negativity, politically, emotionally, socially. It was very destructive socially. So, is it social media or was it that? Because social media has become more prolific, and certainly that divisiveness is used by social media to promote agendas and to divide people. So it's kind of, again, it's like, I can't say that the cause is one thing or another. It's just a reflection of the time. And so, yeah, when you have people messing around with the occult on social media, which is inspiring other people that, hey, let me go play around with that. Obviously, that's going to be problematic, because you're going to have people who don't know what they're doing dabbling. And the occult requires a significant amount of skill to master, a tremendous amount of education that nobody today possesses. I don't care who the hell you are or who the hell you think you are. Unless you trained under one of the very few masters in the world, you really don't know much more than what your New Age bookstore taught you. And most of those books are crap. So that's the problem, is that there's too much dabbling. And now it's easier to get motivated to dabble because you're being inundated with it. There weren't a whole lot of shows on the occult, before social media. You might have had a few. You had a movie here and there that would come out, a Ouija board movie or something like that. But now it's like you can tune into this stuff all the time. And I hate to say it, but, paranormal investigation doesn't help either. Because there's a lot of people that go that route with it. There's a lot of people that go the occult route rather than the let's resolve. They want to prove it exists. They want to excite energy. They want to get that really cool capture, that really cool EVP that no one else has. But they could give a good shit about whether or not somebody's somebody's suffering, including the spirit that you're capturing.
Yes.
Because a lot of times you're just tormenting these spirits with that kind of paranormal investigation. And that's not cool. These things are needing help to rest, and you're just exciting them, hurting them more. It's like, yeah, I mean.
So I think we nailed the question. They said yes. They were asking about the influence of people seeing influencers doing this and wanting to emulate.
I mean, I would say that that's not helping. Whether or not the direct rise that I'm seeing is the result of that or other factors, it's certainly not helping. We're living in a very volatile time energetically. There's a lot of disunity in the world today, and things like that are not going to help.
Someone asks if they wear a St. Benedict medal, will that keep them safe?
Well, I mean, first of all, is it properly blessed? Because it's not a sacramental of the church until it has been blessed by the church, which in the Catholic faith requires that it be blessed by either a priest or bishop. That's what makes it a sacramental, which means it's an expression or extension of the grace of the sacraments. That's what that means. And the sacraments are what protect us, what increases grace within us. So in order for that to do the job that it does, it's just jewelry outside of that. But and then the other side is, what's your faith in the power of St. Michael? I mean, are you just wearing it as a talisman? No, that's not going to do anything, because it's not a talisman. It's not a magical amulet. It is an article that represents your faith, and it's only as strong as the faith that you possess. And I'm not talking about faith in the object. I'm not even talking about faith in the saint. I'm talking about your faith with Christ, which all of that should be a reflection of. I don't care if you believe in St. Michael. I don't care if you think St. Michael's the greatest thing that ever happened. But if you have no relationship with Jesus Christ, your appreciation for St. Michael is moot. It means nothing. Because St. Michael is not there Jesus is not there at St. Michael's pleasure. It's the other way around, and St. Michael knows that, and he doesn't want to be standing as a replacement for your relationship to God. That's the problem with seeing these medals as amulets and talismans. They're not. They're not articles of magic. They're representations of your relationship to God, a way of expressing that. And if there's no relationship, then the medal does nothing for you. So the answer to that is up to you. Only you can answer that based upon knowing how that works.
Do you believe a person who has abilities as a medium comes from God?
Yes, I do. I believe that is one of the charisms of the Holy Spirit. I think it's part of the testing of spirits, and I think it's part of the gift of and the gift of discernment. So I think it is part of the charismata, but not necromancy. There's two types of mediumship. Okay, there's people that are naturally gifted. They didn't ask for this. They didn't want this, but they just realized that they have this ability. That is a gift of the Holy Spirit. They were born with it. There are other people that try to acquire this, and they use ritual and occult means to get it, which is a form of necromancy. When Scripture refers to communicating with the dead as being a forbidden practice, what it's referring to is necromancy. It is not referring to the gifts of the Holy Spirit. Clearly, the gifts of the Holy Spirit is from God. So, there's two different types of mediumship that, unfortunately, we today in the common vernacular, we use the same word for both. But there are necromancers, and then there are those that are gifted with the Holy Spirit. And we call them both mediums if they can communicate with the dead.
Why is Ouija available on a wide scale, considering it's not a toy?
Because Parker Brothers doesn't believe in it, and it makes money. It's one of the best-selling board games there is, as far as they're concerned. So why would you discontinue a product that makes you so much money? As a corporation, that would be a bad business decision. And if you just think it's a board game, if you have no real belief, and I'm going to be honest with you, most of these, I've noticed, one thing that I find that's really interesting is that the more money and more material responsibility a person seems to have, the less spiritual they tend to get. I don't know why. It doesn't need to be that way. And there are, of course, exceptions. But I noticed that happens quite a bit. So if you have the big CEO or board of directors of a major company like Parker Brothers, and you've got a best-selling line, a board game as you see it, that's been selling well for decades, why would you discontinue it? They don't believe the stories about it. They could care less. They think it's superstition.
John apologizes to the parishioners for taking us away on Saturday. He greatly appreciates the sacrifices you make to come to Alabama.
Oh, that's very kind. I appreciate that. I know a lot of our congregation is watching. This is the channel that they would be watching on. And I don't, honestly, to be honest, I don't think they mind. I think our church likes when we're out there doing this because they see this as a necessity. And all of these parishioners we have that are the dedicated members are very strong supporters. They are pledged supporters. They financially keep the church from going bankrupt, and they know that this is the work. This is part of what this church does. So I try to avoid canceling mass, of course, by not scheduling events on the weekend. But sometimes it can't be helped, and if it's a case that's bad enough and unavoidable, as long as we're not doing it every week, I think they're fine. I don't think they mind too much.
Charlotte has a question from Vestiges this week.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to say this name. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to pronounce it correctly, but she says, oh wait, the chat just moved. Okay, sorry. Okay, Father Amorth, Amorth, says in his books that God-given gifts of a spiritual nature never drain or make a person tired. Only evil ones do. God-given gifts uplift and give energy, just as Father Chris and Brian spoke of when celebrating Mass. When Brian and Jamie do their work with negative energies, it drains them. Marty and Michael experience the tiredness. Therefore, is it bad energy that they're working with? Unbeknownst to them, of course, they seem like lovely people.
I think it can be. I mean, anytime you come in contact with negative energy, okay, it's going to be a drain on your energy. Okay, so an exorcist is going to be empowered during the rite, but they're going to crash afterwards. And if there's an exorcist out there that says otherwise, they're lying, or they're not serious about the work. Because I've never known an exorcist that did not get thoroughly exhausted after a long, because physically it's work, and you're dealing with very strong negative energy. So yeah, I mean the rite of exorcism guides you through it, and I've never been tired during a case, but I crash afterwards. So there's some truth to what he's saying. I think it's an incomplete answer, though. As far as Marty and Michael, I mean, I think they're taking in energy from all over, because they're not necessarily dealing with angels all the time. And most of the time they're just dealing with people. And just because a person's dead doesn't mean that they're energetically improved in any way, which means there's going to be a drain. So it's about the source of the gift to lift you and give you strength, because it has no other intention than to increase your grace, which is a storehouse of energy. But going into a demonic battle as an exorcist, you're going to have to face that negative energy, and it's going to try to drain you. And even if you have a lot of grace, there's conflict there. And I think if Marty and Michael are trying to help people,
Okay, it's climbing.
So, if Marty and Michael are trying to make connections with the dad, trying to help people, they're going to run into situations or energy systems that are going to drain them. It's not the gift that's draining them. It's the interaction with this foreign energy that drains them. It's the same thing for the exorcist. It's not the exorcism that's draining me. It's the interaction with the demonic entity that's draining me, or at least trying to, which is why you need to go in spiritually strong. And if you do too much, you can get yourself too weak. So maybe part of the reason why Marty and Michael are tired is they work too hard. I probably wouldn't be doing events as often and as frequently as they do. I don't do exorcisms every day for that reason. I don't do exorcisms every week for that reason. I probably do at most in a very busy time one every month or every 2 months. I very rarely, will do anything more than that, and that's just because I want to be responsible. I don't want to be drained.
Use the left 2 lanes to keep left to I-459 south.
But it's important to understand it's not the gift with the foreign energy. That's what creates.
Do you find that demons send lower energies first to trick the investigator?
Yes. Yep. Every time. Every single time. It's very hard for an inexperienced investigator to be able to tell the difference between a haunting, a psychological disturbance, an actual fallen angel, an elemental, a thought form. Next to impossible for them to tell the difference. Because a demon's going to hide under all of those things, preferably mental illness, because that's the easiest one to dismiss. It's the easiest one to trick, because you can justify anything with mental illness. I mean, think about it. And mental illness can simulate any kind of behavior, any kind of disturbance.
We should probably wrap up by the next.
Yeah, we'll go for another 7 miles. Okay, so when this let's go for another 8 miles. So when it says 3,
Okay.
let's when it's 3 miles left, we'll close up.
Probably time for one more question.
1 or 2. I could probably do 2 quick ones or 1 lengthy one. So look at that. The whole trip just went by like that.
I know.
Because we have our.
You're right.
It's fun. It's like
You were right.
take your people with you. You know. We got their prayers. We got their questions. It's fun. It's like having the whole, our whole fan base in the car with us.
Uh-huh.
It's nice.
Speaking of energy, what are you guys having for dinner?
Porterhouse steak here. Going to Longhorn. So it's right near the hotel.
Is the name of the demon important?
Oh, always. If there's actually a demon involved, that's how we get our foothold on eliminating it. Once you have the name of a thing, you have control over that thing. That's a primary, basic occult law. You can't do much until you have that. Fortunately, we have the grace of Christ is such that they are compelled to have to give it. They fight and they resist, but they eventually have to give in. I've never seen a demon not give in. In all my years, I've never encountered them.
Time for another one.
An easy one. Yeah, 6 months.
Bradley says he drives a lot for work and he listens to playbacks of Vestiges. It's a great.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. There's a lot of content there for many years. Vestiges has been on for a while, and it started out as Vestiges of Christianity. After Dark was a sister show that came out as a secondary show, as a spin-off show. It started out as Vestiges of Christianity, which was basically a lot of theological discussion. But I realized that what people really want is variety. And so After Dark gives me a chance to talk about everything. So sometimes we talk about theology, sometimes we talk about the paranormal, sometimes we talk about even mundane things,
How to make cocoa.
Yeah. Or what's the drink of the week. I got time for probably another. We still got about 4 miles. Got here really early.
Mm-hmm.
That was not a 2-hour drive.
Well, we still have 20
minutes.
Yeah. Are you finding the jinns are a bigger problem now?
Jinns? I haven't encountered a jinn in a long time. But that's not because I haven't had the opportunity to. It's just we haven't been taking cases where that happens. And
there's a movie coming out soon, I think.
there
about
is.
jinn.
That's probably going to create an uptick. But
Mm-hmm.
Typically, the only time we encounter jinn are when people are... and most of the time it is people of the Muslim faith that reach out to us for help with them. I don't typically get Christians that have that problem. Now, if a Christian were to live out in Saudi Arabia for a while and come back, I guess it's theoretically possible that they could have encountered one. But most of the time it seems to come from Muslims, and most of the time it comes from people who have had extended stays out in the Arabian Peninsula. And I'm not taking cases out there. I've never been out there. And the only time I encounter people are when they've come back from there and they're now out here. But there's a lot of special situations that would need to come together for that to happen. So I can't say that. It's not that they're not out there. It's not that there's not a lot of those cases. It's just we haven't been we're considering cases that might be in that category. And honestly, I'm fine with that because they're the least enjoyable of cases to. They're very difficult, and when you have on top of that a religious barrier, when you're a Christian trying to look out for me, and it's going to be thoroughly exhausting trying to create a resolution. I mean, absolutely, because I mean that's the scriptural evidence of that. Jesus threw the demons into pigs and they jumped off the cliff. So we know from scripture that happens. But yes, animals can develop demonic attachments, absolutely. And for the same reasons that people do. They come in contact with one, they're spiritually unprotected. And just like people, there are animals that have high spiritual proclivity and animals that don't. Most animals, however, are naturally spiritually equipped to deal with most situations, but domestication weakens animals and makes them more vulnerable to the same type of spiritual vulnerabilities that we as people possess. So yes, it is possible and it does happen, and that's why I always encourage on the feast of Saint Assisi, St. Francis of Assisi, go ahead and bring your animals for blessing. They have the right of blessing animals on the feast of St. Francis of Assisi. We try to always celebrate that day, and if you come and watch the stream this year, you'll see Heathcliff get wet.
Quick tangential: can they be exercised?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, that's it. I guess we're at 2.5 miles from our exit, and we got another 10 miles to go beyond that. So I'm going to close it up here. Thank you guys all for your patience with missing Mass tonight. For those of you who are looking forward to it, your prayers for coming into these high-risk situations with us, and also for spending time with me on this long drive so I didn't get bored for 2 hours. It gives me something to think about, and I actually do enjoy talking with all of you. You're all wonderful. We love you all, and thank you for your continued support of this channel, of this church, of this ministry, and you'll be seeing more. This should end up on this particular event will end up on some type of medium that you'll be able to watch, whether it be television or something else, and there'll be more ghost adventures.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you for your prayers.
God bless.